Hello everyone. Okay, now here we're going to discuss about memory. You know, this is very important fundamental that you have to learn before you get into programming. Right? We talked about oh, what is a programming language, why we need a programming language, and we talked about the compiler. And we're going to talk about memory here. And of course, we are not going to get deep into like how it will store programming related items as of now, because we will be learning that when we start and doing a programming. Why we need to learn now? We have to understand the fundamental, right? So that when you go there, these are kinds of dots that when you go there into the exact in the exact place when we discuss about programming, when a programmable item is getting stored somewhere, then you will be able to connect, okay, this is getting stored here in particular memory, right? So anyway, we will get dig deep into that when we reach that point. We discussed already about compiler, but still when we get into programming, we'll talk more about compiler in deep, and also we'll talk more about memory in deep over there. But now, just to give a heads up, like what it is and where it will come in the programming and what part it will play in programming, that's what we're going to understand before we get into programming. Okay, but this is very fundamental, very important thing to learn before you start programming. Okay, so now everyone may know about the memories in 10 15 years back, before the mobile was not that big, like people may not know about these words, ram, rom, and all those things, right? Now when you go to a mobile shop, you have that expectations, like I need at least 4 GB of ram and some 128 or 64 GB of ROM, something like that. You have an expectation, even though you may not know exactly what RAM and ROM is, but you know something. This is related to memory, right? So, and also you know that improves the performance. When there is a more RAM, it improves the performance. When there is more ROM, I can put a lot of data into it. You're aware of that fundamental, right? So that's good actually. So we talk about it now. So what is RAM? RAM is called random access memory, and the ROM in your mobile phones that you use very much, right? ROM is read only memory, and hard drive, or in Android, the memory where we store our image files and everything is called ROM, right? Even where our operating system is there, it's all called ROM. And there is a bit of memory also inside CPU, right? So we also talk about it. Okay, so what these different type of memories do, right? Or first of all, we should understand what is the difference between the ROM and RAM and all those things, right? RAM is like a random access memory. This memory will be used, for kind of a temporary usage, like, as mentioned here, it's volatile. It's a volatile memory, right? So what that means, right? Every electronic device will be powered. Without power, nothing going to work, right? So when it's powered, it will store the data, whatever that you give it to the RAM. When the power goes off, everything goes off. When you turn on the RAM again, it won't have whatever that you had when before it got switched off, right? So it loses everything. It will be storing something as long as it is on. When it goes off, that's it. When you start again, it will start fresh. It won't have whatever it had before it goes off. ROM, another, ROM, read only memory. It is, it is like even if the power goes off, the memory will be retained. I mean, it means the data will be retained. So the data will be retained in the memory. So they are called non-volatile memories. So they won't lose the data even if the power goes. Unless and until you go and format a hard disk, unless and until you go and erase everything in your mobile phone, it's not going to get erased. Yeah, or when you restart your phone, when the power goes off in your phone, it's not going to be erased, or it's not going to be deleted unless and until you manually delete it, right? So there is some program which goes and deleting that manually. So that's the reason they are called read-only memory. Means they are read-only in terms of power. Not you might ask like, I'm deleting my photos and adding new photos, so how come it is read-only? Read-only in terms of like whatever we discussed now. When the power goes off, it won't be deleted. It's read-only. It will stay there. It can be deleted. It can be modified using some programs. This deletion of images and addition of images are happening by a program, right? And so I think you might have understood about what's the ROM and RAM. Now we talk about a memory in a CPU. The processing unit will also the central processing unit, the processor, nothing but the processor that we discussed already. This is the this is the main thing which do all the processing, right? So this will also have a memory. They like those memories are required when we want to do something very some when a processing like during when a processor do some process, when there is a data which is required very often, that those data will be stored inside the processor itself. So you don't want to know much about it now. We will be discuss about it when we come into the programming. But now what you can understand is, right, this will be the fastest memory, or when you have a data in that processor, the performance performing some calculation with that data will be faster than performing a data performing some calculation in the data from the RAM, and which will be very very slower when we take a data and process from the hard drive. So the fastest memory is like the memory inside the processor, and second is RAM, and third is hard drive. The hard drive is the slowest. So most of the time, if you want to process some data which is in the hard drive, we take that data and we'll put it into the RAM, then the processor will take that and process it. Okay, so hard disk, the intention of the hard disk is to have a read only memory, so it need not to be fast. So we copy the data and we'll put it into the RAM and we'll process it here. Okay, so how can I explain it in better ways, right? Like, say for example, you all might know about this image editing softwares, right? You take your photo and you will edit it and you will save it, right? So you will add the contrast and you will change the color and do a lot of things. Nowadays you can add a lot of things to it. So when you open an image, the image, when you take an image, the image will get stored in the camera. When you capture an image, that will get stored into your ROM, right? Read only memory. So when you're about to edit that image, it will get copied from your hard disk and it will go to the RAM. The application, the photo editing application, will copy that image from the hard drive and put it into the RAM. So whatever the modification that you do on that image is happening just on the RAM. When you click on save, it will go back and save to the hard disk. If if you just cancel it, or if you not saved that, if you close that application, all the changes that you did is not going to be retained. It will go away. So that is what RAM is, right? So when you close an application, whatever the modification that you were doing with that photo won't be retained, because it was just in the RAM. As we said, whenever we take things out of the RAM, whenever whatever the whatever the modifications that we did with the data which sits in the RAM, if you are not going to save that, it's not going to be retained. So that is the best example. So we take the image, that means the image editing software will take copy the image and put inside the RAM. And for processing, whenever you do some changes in that image, the processing will be handled by the processor will do all those background processing. Means like if you change from one color to other color, everything will be handled by processor. And whatever the changes that you made from color red to green, if you change, that will be stored, that information will be, it has been changed from the red to green, will be changed the RAM. When you click on save, the changes that you made from red color to the green color will be updated and will be stored with the image in the hard disk. So this is what the memory is all about. So how it's going to, what is programming, where these comes in the programming, right? So whatever the image editing software that we discussed is out of the programming, right? So means someone has programmed and developed that image editing software. So whatever the changes they do with the image, they will store it in a temporary place, and they will keep it on that temporary place. Once you click save, they will take the temporary, whatever the changes that you made, temporary changes, they will store it into the actual image, and they'll store that image into the hard disk. So that temporary image, the temporary modification details are getting stored in some memory. That is RAM, right? So the program uses that memory a lot to process your data. To manipulate and to have that in that memory. Processing actually happens in the processor. The manipulated data, which is temporarily will stored in that memory, which is RAM. And finally, once we decided this is what the final, we save it and it will come to the hard drive again. Okay, so if I want to say in easy terms, like in calculator, you might have seen like when you want to add two numbers, 9 plus 2, you click 9 and then you will click plus, and when you click 2, 9 will not be there in that calculator, 2 will be showing. When you click equal to, it will become 11. So where was that 9? It was in the memory, right? So when you click plus and another number, that 9 got stored in a memory. Then when you click equal to, it picked that 9 from the memory and added with the last number that you typed and gave you that result 11, right? So in simple terms, like how kids remember when they start practicing this addition, they will put the 9 in the brain, and they will have two fingers opened, and they will close one and they say 10, and they close the other, they say 11. The answer is 11. So the 9 is in the memory. Similarly, like when we do some manipulation on the data, that will be stored in a temporary memory, that is a RAM. The actual 9 plus 1 10 and 9 plus 10 plus 1 11, that will be done by the processor. Finally, whatever been 11, if we want to store that 11, that will get stored in the hard drive. So this is what, these are the memories that are involved in the programming world. So these all memories will be utilized by the programming world. Like the application will store its persistent data inside the hard disk. Whenever we open the application and we do some manipulation modifications, that will be happen in the RAM, and the processing will be happened in the processor, and final output will be, again if required, will be stored in the hard disk. Okay, so this is what exactly like we were discussing, right? The main memory, which is RAM, and the CPU, this registers where we're talking about, this is a memory, and this is the hard disk, the disk drives, right? These are the hard disks. So whenever we need a image to be opened by the image editing application, it will be opened by the disk drive and open from the disk drive, and it will be put inside the RAM. So the whatever the application, whatever you change with that application, when you change a color or when you change something, it will be like processed using the processor, and whatever the changes that you made will be temporarily stored in the RAM. When you click save, whatever that the temporary changes that you made will become permanent, and it will get stored inside the disk drive. So this is what memory. So this is very high level. So when we get into the programming, we will come to know how this RAM will give us space to a particular data, because a lot of applications will be running. How a RAM will handle all those different types of applications, how it will give a memory to your application, all those things we will learn when we come into the programming. Okay, so guys, I think this is too much information today. So thanks for listening, and we will get into the other items in the next unit. Thank you.